Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Christy Hermanson. And I'd first like to take this opportunity to say thank you to the FTP, to Lillian, to Mark, and to all the rest of you as well. We have a lot of changes coming up at GSA and really appreciate this opportunity to get out here and speak to you about everything we have going on. Okay, all right. So first of all, our IAE is the name of our program office. That's the program office at GSA that manages SAM.gov and a number of other federal award systems. They're the government-wide transactional systems that implement some of the federal policy. This is just a little bit about our program office. I have a few overview slides here. And then once I get through those, we will get into some screenshots and really walk you through some of the changes that you're going to see coming up. So a little bit of our mission here. You can see that we really spend most of our time focusing on how do we improve things like transparency and accountability and quality and all that in federal reporting without placing undue reporting burden or creating additional barriers to working with the federal government. It's always a fine line to walk, and that's really, you can see where our mission lies there. So this is a list of the systems that our office manages. You can see at the top, Beta SAM and SAM. And for today's presentation, this is going to be the primary focus. The big effort we have going on, and we're going to talk about this throughout the presentation, is the bringing together of Beta SAM and SAM into a single system. So that's going to be the focus of today's presentation, but you can see here on this list a number of other systems that we manage. Some of these are procurement systems, some of them affect the grants community, but that's the full list of the systems that our program office manages. But again, today the focus really is going to be SAM and Beta SAM, bringing those together. And then on the right-hand side, you also see a few numbers showing you the size, the scale that we're talking about for our environment. So since I think we first put Beta SAM out there as a beta environment back in the fall of 2017. And almost a year later, we decommissioned our first system. Our first system was CFDA. And since then, we've decommissioned a couple of others. I've got some slides to show on that. But throughout this, we've had Beta SAM and SAM as two separate systems that have been running side by side. And you know, as you can imagine, that's confusing for people. And so we are sort of right on the verge right now of bringing these things together, at which point all of this functionality is going to be on a single site, and it will be called SAM.gov. We're getting rid of the beta, and it will be the authoritative site for the data that you see there. So you can see here, we've got some dates to mention. The first one to make note of is April 26th. So April 26th is the date when we will take and release the system that is sort of the culmination of bringing these two systems together. So when you go to SAM.gov on that date, you will see the new system and it will be available. And then there's another date on this slide, and that's February 9th, 2021. We will be holding an industry day on that date. On the very last slide, there is some contact information, and the link to register for that industry day is on that last slide. So if anyone is interested in participating in that, to get more information, that link to register is on the last slide. And there's also a link if anyone's interested in participating in alpha testing. You can see new SAM testing at gsa.gov. You can send an email to that link with your name on it if you would like to participate in that testing. So this shows you the systems that we have migrated into this environment so far. Assistance listing, CFDA, which is a federal assistance system with programs for grants, loans, those types of things. Contract opportunities on the contract side, FBO.gov. The reporting capability only from FPDS.gov, and then WDOL.gov, which is wage determinations, wage rates, and fringe benefits. So those 4 systems there, and what that means to you is that when you go to SAM.gov on April 26th, and it is the new SAM.gov, that you are going to see all of this functionality alongside of entity registrations and exclusions information that are currently in SAM. A little bit of our timeline, and you can see in yellow, SAM is what's up next. Before I move on, also you can see the other systems that will be brought in. So all of the IAE systems will ultimately be in this environment. So if you use FSRS, for example, that will be next after SAM as the next one to be brought in. So before we take and release the new system with SAM and Beta SAM merged together on the 26th, we do have an interim release of Beta SAM. So when we first released Beta SAM, it was back in, 2017. So that's been 4 years, and a lot's happened since then. We had very little functionality in that original system. There's also been a lot of changes in federal standards for user experience. So there's going to be a significant refresh of the user interface for Beta SAM prior to SAM going live as the new system. We are doing that in March to give all of our current users an opportunity to become familiar with the new look and feel of some of those pages before we take and bring SAM in. So if you were to go to Beta SAM today to look at it, know that in March, there will be a release to update that look and feel. And then in April, we will take and merge the rest of the SAM functionality in there. And then you can see April 2022 is when we're targeting for the unique entity ID. And at the end of this I'm going to be speaking about the SAM transition. And when I am finished, Zach will be talking about the new unique entity ID. So there will be more about that later. All right, so that's my overview, my introduction to everything that's going on. And what I'd like to do with the rest of my time is to take and walk through what some of the differences are going to be for you between the current SAM.gov and what it's going to look like when we merge these together. So this is, I've got a screenshot that I think should be coming up. It's taking a second to load, maybe. Is that loading on your screen, Edgar?
It may have gotten lost on the export from PDF to PowerPoint. I apologize.
It's a screenshot of the new homepage. So, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's showing up as a blank page on my end.
There it is. That's it right there. Is there a way to take and bring this up so it fills the whole screen? Some of the text is a little bit small. Is it the largest it goes?
Yeah, that's the largest it goes.
Okay. All right. So what you see, there's two images here. The one on the left is the full homepage, fairly small, and then a blow up of the splash area. So if you look at this right here, the splash area in particular, you can see on the left-hand side, you've got contract opportunities, you've got, which was the FBO system, contract data, which was the FPDS reports, all the other different, I'm going to use the word domain a lot today. And that's what we're calling all of these different sections of the site that really represent, in a lot of cases, they represent systems that have come in. But all the different domains, contract opportunities, contract data, assistance listings, and then you can see entity registration. And then below that, you've got entity compliance, which is going to be some reporting, SCR and buyer preferred reporting from SAM, and then exclusions. We're going to focus today on entity registration, but this gives you an idea of, when you come to the new site, all the different things that will be here alongside of the functionality that is in the current SAM. And then you can see on the right-hand side, then there's buttons to get started with entity registration, to renew an entity, or to check your registration status. And then further down the page, you can't see it very clearly, but there is a section of announcements and then links to some help materials. And all that help, I've got a slide on this later, but all of that help material will be over at the Federal Service Desk, which is our customer service website.
Are you ready to move on to the next?
Yeah, I don't think I have control anymore.
Yep, we're going to give it right back to you. Just hold on one moment.
Thanks. So one note, federal standards now require all new development of federal websites to support responsive design. The target for all of SAM.gov to be responsive is December of 2024, but you'll start to see different elements of it. This is an image of the header, the home page with the menu opened up on a phone. So just to let you be aware that as we're going through, we will be, it's not all fully responsive, particularly when you get to the data entry, which it's a lot to do on a phone anyway. But you will see that we are working towards making everything responsive as we go. So navigating SAM after the transition. This is a view of the main menu for someone who is not signed in. So you can see there's the home page, and then you've got search, which on the current SAM was search records. But if you click on this search, it's not going to take you to a search of just entity registrations. It's a search that goes across all of the domains. So in a minute, I'll show you how to get to just entity registrations, but know that that search now is a unified search that searches assistance listings, that searches contract opportunities. So exclusions, it's a search of all of our data. There is a data bank which runs reports using a business analytics tool. This isn't something that we had in SAM. This is something that, that we brought over reports from FPDS. We've added some for contract opportunities, but that's going to be a whole new section with SAM. Data services it was data access in in current SAM, and that is where you're going to find all of your file extracts with the raw data files. And the help is actually going to give you a page that's going to take you over to fsd.gov, our federal service desk, which houses the knowledge base for information on how to use the system. So that's the main menu. Then when you sign in, you'll see there's a secondary menu that appears for signed in users. It has a workspace, which is going to be your My SAM page. But because we have so much other functionality that has been brought in, it's going to be very much role-based, where what you see on that page is really going to depend on which domains you have permissions for. And we'll talk about that in a moment, what that means. But know that what you see on that page is very much going to be based on the permissions that you have in the system. And then there are a couple of different feeds as well. A notifications feed, and that is information only. These are notifications about upcoming dates, records that have changed, but those are informational in purpose only. And then a requests feed, and those are tasks that another person in the system has asked you to perform. And the key to that really is that somebody else has asked you to do something and is waiting for a response. Not every role in the system is necessarily going to have requests, but if you do, they're aggregated from all the domains in a single place. And then at the bottom of that, the home page and every other page on the site, actually, there is a feedback tool. It's a one-question survey. It's free form text so that you can put in whatever you would like to say. So, you know, what's the must-have feature that, you know, what's your favorite thing about the site, right? Or what's confusing, what's hard to find. But just be aware, this feedback is really valuable to us. We bring these comments in, we categorize them, we use them to see what things people are talking about. You know, what the topics that get the most feedback are the ones that we interpret as being sort of the most urgent for people. So we process this feedback, we read the comments and all of that, but this is typically a one-way communication. There's been some, I think, misunderstanding that that this is a way to get feedback or to get information back from us. And the number of comments we get is in the tens of thousands. So we don't typically individually respond to them. But if we are invited to follow up with you, you know, if we have questions about something that you've said, you can put contact information in there, but it doesn't mean that we will follow up. So we get a lot of feedback. So if you have questions that need answers, the customer service desk at FSD would still be the place to go for that. All right, so signing in. So to sign into the system, if you already have a login.gov account, if you're already an entity administrator, do entity registrations, have been using sam.gov, then you would have a login.gov account to use that. And we are using the same account in the new system. So as we take and move into this merged environment, your user account, your email won't change. And you should use the same one. If you have more than one, you should continue to use the same one. And if you do so, you will have your same roles. You will be asked to complete a new profile, but it's a pretty short form that asks for your name and a business phone, and that's optional. I said a little bit about roles before. You can see on the left-hand side there, these are the three different sort of ways that we organize the roles in this new environment. So you should be familiar with the first two, where you have a role for a specific entity with a specific DUNS or UEI. And then you have your role name. The old roles were named entity administrator, entity registration representative, and entity viewer. So those names have been updated to administrator, data entry, and viewer. We have tried to do some standardization across our domains. But the thing that's new then, because we have all this functionality working together, is that there's also a domain, which means that if you're an administrator, you will be an administrator for your university for the entity registration domain. And that's going to give you permission for entity registration. But having permission for entity registration doesn't mean that you have permission for all the domains. So roles will be by entity, by role, and then by domain. And if you already have an account and a role in SAM, if you're already an entity administrator, when you use your login.gov account to sign in after this transition, then you will be an administrator for the entity registration domain in the new environment for that same university or whatever your entity is. And you can see of these, the data entry and the viewer roles can be requested by someone. You can assign, if you're an entity administrator and if you want to assign another administrator, and we actually recommend that you do, so that you're, if people leave or whatever, that entities don't get orphaned. So you're able to assign additional administrators, but that is a top-down assignment that you make. No one, we don't have it in our form to be able to request that. So you can assign multiple administrators, but it's a top-down assignment. An existing administrator has to go in and make that assignment and initiate that. All of the roles can be initiated by the administrator. Data entry and viewer are also something you can request. And you can see on the right-hand side, that's what the request form looks like. So when you request, you say, here's my UEI, DUNS number, here's the role that I'm requesting, and here's the domain entity registration. And if someone requests a role that's not appropriate, if someone asks to be data entry and you just want to give them view permission, as an administrator, you can downgrade that or upgrade it if you'd like. If they ask for data entry and you really want them to be an administrator, you can also bump it up for them. Do we have another missing picture here?
Yep, I pulled it up on mine though.
Okay, thanks. All right, so that was a little bit about login and about how roles are changing. So let's look a little bit now about navigating through the site. So from that home page, there was a link that was the entity registration link. And that's going to take you to a landing page to orient you to the entity registration domain. So you can see that there is a search bar that will just search entity registrations. There is an advanced search link that will take you into search with all of our advanced filters. You can also check disaster response registry or active only as options on that entity search. So if you want to search just entity registrations, you can go in through that landing page and just hit the entity registrations. You can see that the links on the home page for getting started with your entity registration, for renewing an entity, and for checking your registration status. You have those same 3 links that you had on the home page. They're going to go to the exact same place, whether you click them on the home page or click them from here. Those links will go the exact same place. Then you've got a couple of accordions that open and close that are going to have some help articles for the search. And then if you go further down the page, there will be additional links to for customer service, for more help articles, links to the data extracts that are in data services, all the file extracts. So there's a page here that really just orients you to everything that's in the system for entity registration. Next slide. All right, so if you click on that Getting Started button then from the landing page, it's actually going to take you here. One more step before you get into the form for entity registration. If you were renewing your entity, I'll show you that next. Then it would take you straight into your work. But for getting started with a brand new registration, we are routing everyone through this page here that has 4 different steps in there, basically walking through everything you need to do to be prepared for that registration. So requesting your DUNS number, preparing your data is telling you all the documentation that you need to have on hand before you get started. Then making sure that you have the login.gov account if you don't already. And then all the steps to submit that, to finish your registration, and then what the expectations are for how long it's going to take that registration to go through. So this is the page that you get routed through. And then if you click Get Started from here, that's going to actually take you into the entity registration process. Next slide. Oh, and I think I have control again. All right, so if you had clicked the Renew link instead of Get Started, then if you're already signed in, it's going to take you directly here. If you're not signed in, then it's going to take you through the sign-in process, and then you will be redirected here after sign-in. So this is your workspace, and this right now you've got a My SAM page. So My SAM has gone away, and now you're going to have a workspace. And this is that page that's very much going to be dependent on what roles you have. So, everybody who is not a federal user will actually have the entity management controls, because anybody can start that process to register a new entity. So you can see I have some profile information there. I have previews of my pending requests, but then everybody will have that entity registration control. And you can see these are all zeroed out, but if I had registrations in this workspace, then it would tell me how many I have active, how many were in a draft state, how many were a work in progress, and how many I had submitted that were still pending approval. It will tell you the next update that's due. So when is the next one? If you have multiple registrations, what is the next due date that you have across all of those? And it will also tell you how many you have due in the next 30 days. Then if you click into I think I'm missing a slide again.
Christy, I'm just going to give you control over the PDF on my screen.
Okay. Thanks. Maybe some of the images were pretty big.
Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah.
Thank you for bearing with us through these technical difficulties. You should have control now.
Okay.
And then you can scroll.
See where we were. Okay, so we were here. So from here, if you click through the links on this entity management control, it's going to take you into this second level of your workspace. And depending on how many different registrations you manage, it will provide you a list of all of them. It might be 1, it could be 80, right? but this is your list of all the registrations that you manage. You can see there's a number of filters along the side. You can look something up by keyword, which will take a UEI, it'll take a DUNS number, it'll take a cage code, it'll take an entity name. You can filter by registration status. So if you want to see all the ones you've submitted, if you want to see all the ones that you have active, all the works in progress, you can take and you can filter them and just show them by status. You can see if you need, you can see which ones, you can see I have one here that has an address update that, that needs to be made. You can filter by those that need address updates. And then you can see the status of the different registrations. Right now it's sorting by title, but you can actually sort also by the expiration date. So if you want to see what the next one is that you have due, you can sort by expiration date and that'll come up first, the next one. And then there's a couple little icons here as well, or tags, one that says tin and one that says cage. So for anything that you have as a work in progress or that's been submitted, these tags will appear and will tell you where your registration is at in those validation processes, the tin validation and then the cage validation. So if you want to see which of those have come through, you can use this to also see that information. All right, so from here, if you click on register entity, or there's a couple other different places we pointed out where you could start a registration from, that's going to take you down into the entity registration screens. If you look closely at this, you'll see that the header and the, well, if you can't see the footer, but you'll see that the header is the same header that we have on the other pages that we've looked at. But the form itself is actually the form from the current system. So we've brought over the functionality here, but we did not redo the entire step-by-step registration process at this time. So as you go step-by-step through this process, you're going to see that these are the same familiar screens that you have been working with since SAM was launched back in 2012. And one thing to point out, you can see at the very top there, it says View Assistance for Overview Registration Overview. That SAM Assistant will still be available as well. One thing to note with the new header and footer, there are a lot of different links on the page that you can click in the midst of entity registration. The behavior as you go from page to page, it will save what you have entered in when you click next or previous on a page. And if you try to click on the header links or footer links in the midst of your data entry, it will warn you that whatever you have on that page will be lost if you click out in the middle of a registration. So just to protect you from losing any data unexpectedly, you can cancel out of that, finish your page, click next, previous to get it saved, and then click out of the entity registration and without losing anything. Okay, so that's the registration process itself, which again really hasn't changed other than the way that you get into it from the home page. I'd like to switch gears a little bit then and just talk about the search. So there's a few different ways to search from the home page. I don't know how well you can see. I've got a search screen that's laid over the top of the home page on the slide. And if you look on that home page in the background, there is the search in the main menu. There's also a search bar on the home page. And then there's the search that we did from the, I looked at from the entity landing page. So this right here is showing you the ability to search across all the domains. So if you click on the search in the main menu, That's going to be an all domain search. And you can see here, I've got a result that's an entity registration, an assistance listing, and an exclusion. And that's going in and just looking, for the word rock. If I search in the search bar on the home page, I can select a domain and narrow that down to just entity information, or I can search across all of the domains again. And we have that all domain search. And the number of filters that you're going to have when you're searching all domains is going to be a fairly small subset of the filters available if you're just searching entity registrations. That's a fairly important point. If you try to search all domains, there's a lot of filters you're not going to see. The advantage of it is that you can search across multiple data sets and find out everything there is to know about a particular DUNS number, for example. But you don't get all of the additional filters if you search all the domains. So one thing that is a change with the new system is that the search of entity registrations is going to be behind sign-in. It's still public information, but for entity registrations, you will have to be signed in to see them. So here you can see we're searching, if you look on the left-hand side where it says select domain, we are searching just the entity registrations. We've got all the entity registration filters, but we're not signed in. So we have a message telling us we need to sign in. And then if I was signed in, I would get all of my entity registrations with all the filters. There's really actually a few different ways to get to this search of just the entity registrations. The first was to click on the home page, go to the entity registration landing page, and start your search from that entity registration landing page. Or you could start on the home page and select entity registrations from the search bar on the home page. Or once you're into the search, there's a control right here. This is a domain switcher where it says select domain, where you can switch back and forth between searching all of the domains and just searching entity registrations. And your filtering will change as you change domains. So the narrower the data sets that you're searching, the more filters that you'll have. Broad searches, few filters, narrower domain searches, and you get all the additional filters. Here you can see if you click on advanced search, it will take you in and you'll see all the filters. I was just looking at my watch also and doing a time check and realized I am not going fast enough. So I am going to speed up a little bit. So this is showing all of your advanced filters. You can see the different types of filters that you can filter by. And then once you get to that search result, you can see that you drill down in and there is your display of your records. And you'll notice here and there, like here, you can see the SAM unique entity ID. This has been assigned a unique entity ID. The DUNS number is still the authoritative number for this entity, but that unique entity ID has been assigned. All right, and I am at questions, but I do want to give Zach a chance to speak as well.
Okay, yeah, so we don't have time for questions. It does look like Zach's been kind enough to keep up with all of the questions that have been being asked in the chat. Thank you, Zach. I'm just going to go ahead and give you control of my screen for your part of the presentation. So same.
All right, yeah, thank you, Zach. Zach is awesome that way.
You go ahead and click, you should have control.
I do, okay. How do I get to go down here?
There you go.
Thank you, Leah. Hi, my name is Zach Sankes. I'm our, I think I was introduced earlier, I'm our director for the Integrated Award Environments Business Applications and Operations Division. So I'm going to go over what's a pretty major project that you may or may not have heard on. Is what's called our our unique entity identifier migration. So currently, right now, I need to go back one slide. The federal government's on track to shift away from using what's a proprietary DUNS number to what's going to be like an open data unique entity identifier throughout our IE systems and throughout the federal award lifecycle. So that'll be all any other systems outside of the integrated award environment that also utilize our data or utilize the DUNS number, which could be things like some of your financial payment systems, USA spendings, grants.gov sites like that. So for entities that have so the migration is going to come out. So entities that have an active registration SAM, you're not going to have to go get any actions to go get a UEI. We will assign your UEI on the back end. You'll actually be able to start seeing these relatively shortly. And if you're actually interfacing system with us, you would actually see them already. If you're registering for the first time, you'll actually be getting a UEI integrated with as part of the SAM registration process. So currently, if you register a new entity, you have to go to the Dun & Bradstreet website and either look up your DUNS number if you have it, or they will assign you a new one if you're a new company or a new entity or something like that doesn't exist anywhere. But in the future, we're actually integrating that process within SAM, and you'll get the UEI assigned right there within the registration process itself. And then sub-awardees that are doing as part of your grants reporting, if they have to go get a DUNS number today, they'll go into SAM, they'll get a UEI through it'll be a very abbreviated short process, basically, where they're just identifying who the entity is, some basic information, the name, address, things like that. And then the person that's administering that unique entity identifier for that entity. We do have a couple locations out here where you can follow along for more information. But like I said, this will be a pretty it's gonna be a pretty good size change. So going on. So right now, until we make that April 2022 date, the DUNS number is still the official identifier for doing business. You register a new entity, you need to have a DUNS number as part of that registration. The Dun & Bradstreet actually is kind of one of our validation partners. They'll continue to validate that who you're trying to register. You say who you are is actually is a legitimate organization or legitimate business, that they exist, that they exist where they say they are. And such and such. So that's going to stay the same through April 2022. After that, we do have a different we're changing our whole process. Like I said, besides moving away from DUNS, we also have a new provider that will provide similar they'll provide a similar service, but that'll be more in the behind the scenes. So it won't be like it is now, where you're going to two distinct websites for these services. So just some kind of characteristics. So the UEI, which is being generated out of SAM, it'll look a little bit different. So right now you have the 9-digit DUNS number, which you can use for all kinds of your transactions, for looking up within SAM, for reporting, different kind of reporting purposes, for your any kind of proposals, things like that. The new UEI is a little bit different. It's a 12 character alphanumeric. We did that. It was very intentional to make it look, make sure it was different than what other the other identifiers that we use currently, such as the not just the DUNS number, but also like the TIN, which is a 9-digit number, tax ID number, the cage number, where if you're using that, which is a 5-character value, and we just some other just basic things around it, like we made sure we didn't put zeros at the beginning. So if you deal with this kind of data in bulk, it doesn't get, like, if you try to download it in Excel, it doesn't get cut off. Things like we didn't put O and I in there, so they don't get confused with 0 and 1. So just for ease of, like, things like data, if you're doing your data entry, you always you're not mistyping something. We also included a checksum value into the identifier. This helps make sure this kind of basically detects data entry errors. So this is something like if you type a credit card into a website, it can, like, do an instant check to make sure it's even a valid credit card number. Same kind of thing there. The other thing we're doing is if you use what's called the electronic funds transfer indicator. This is formerly known as the DUNS +4. This is a kind of a unique case where if you if you have a single entity and you have multiple bank accounts that are associated to that entity, the EFT indicator, you would have an EFT indicator for every single one of those bank accounts. So let's say you had an entity, you had 4 different bank accounts associated for whatever reason, just the organization is organized, and manages its financials. Maybe a single organization that runs, multiple, using multiple bank accounts for payments from either any contract awards or grants that they may have. So one of the main things is that this is a separate data field. So when if you're looking at it, if you're doing a search for it, you'll be searching for the EFT indicator separate from the UEI. This is also the same case now, but in the past, the DUNS was in cases concatenated with that EFT indicator on sometimes awards documentation. So one of the major things we have, these are split out entirely, so that the unique entity identifier is well, it's like a one-to-many relationship. You could have many EFT indicators, but they're not a single piece of data. So this way, you'll have a clear delineation and separation between these two data elements. And if you have them today already, these aren't, I should note, the EFT indicators are not changing. So if you, like I said, if you had 4 EFT indicators on your entity, they're going to say those it's a 4-digit number. Those are going to stay the same through the transition. So there's kind of our key milestones here. So right now one of the major things we have with our unique entity identifier is it's used in a lot of system-to-system transmissions. So we have a lot of, like, for example, a lot of grant systems that feed information into FSRS. There's systems that maybe pull down bulk information, or look at exclusions records through SAM.gov. So we've back in December 2019, we released technical specifications for what all those updates to those kind of system interfaces would look like, so that any of your if you have an interfacing system in some case, your technical team can review that information and see what kind of plan out their system updates that they'll need to make for the UEI. We did start assigning UEIs to everybody that registers in SAM has either gotten a UEI or has been getting one since back in May of last year. Now we haven't released those. You can't see them, but they are actually all there. We actually last June on our non-production site, which would be our testing site, they actually are viewable on that site. This is please don't use it as official source, but it is for like I said, for our testing, our user testing, performance testing, things like that. We have made that the unique entity identifier actually available on that site, and we also have made it back starting in September, and we're doing another release here just this week. We are making it available in our outbound SAM data services, which is like we have a series of data extracts. They're basically files that usually used by major systems that use our data, or analysts that want full data sets or data scientists and such. The UEI is actually available now in that has been available now for any and all entities in that data. Some of our next steps, and I'll kind of take you all the way through to our April 2022 full transition, is that we're throughout this rest of this fiscal year, which by government fiscal year that goes through September, goes through from October through September. So fiscal year 21 ends in September 30th. We are planning to implement the unique identifier across all of our systems. That will have specific. By this month, we're planning to have out the specific dates for each individual system. We have most of them, a lot of them we already have published out, but we'll be publishing out the remainder of them by the end of this month. Throughout the Q3, Q4, that's the April through September timeframe, we'll be doing a lot of user testing on our what's called our entity uniques and validation workflows. So, like I said earlier, we are moving from where when you're registrant, you're going into Dun & Bradstreet's website and finding your DUNS number there, and then coming over to SAM.gov and then bringing that DUNS number with you, doing your actual registration. We're shifting to where all that will be on SAM.gov. So we're going to be doing user testing on that workflow, where we're going to be doing a lot of back and forth talking between ourselves and our service providers on that actually do the research and look up your entity information. So that's one of those areas where we'll be looking for testers, and there'll be opportunities to see how that works, so to speak. Around our target goal is October 1st to actually be able to transition all our IE systems where our unique identifier is the authoritative identifier. What that means is means our primary identifier we use for all our business applications and for all our business transactions. We will at that point we're going to do at that point kind of flip from being ramping up to ramping out. So we will at that point the DUNS number, we're still going to make it available and accepted on our websites, but we're essentially start phasing it out. So we're trying to at that point give everybody about a 6-month period where if they're using the DUNS number in their systems, and especially if they're doing system-to-system transactions with the IE systems, they have that 6-month period to kind of phase the DUNS number out. So that's our Q1 to Q2 over FY22. And then our final transition date is April 4th, 2022. After that date, we'll no longer be utilizing the DUNS number for any kind of data entry, any of our interface stuff. We will have some historical archival type purposes, but it will not be, at that point, the DUNS will no longer be utilized anything for government transactions related to contracting and grant making at that point. Stop there, and if we have questions.
I do believe, Christy, you have a few extra slides after this, correct?
I do, but I can do those in 30 seconds. So if we have time for a couple of questions, I think there was a couple that Zach should answer.
Okay. I'm just going to take back.
Yeah. There was one about subrecipients no longer required. If subrecipients are no longer required to register fully in SAM, how will PTEs ensure that they have no delinquent federal debt or other active exclusions?
Okay, so today subrecipients are not required to register fully in SAM. That has never been a requirement from the federal government. The only requirement for the reporting purposes that the prime contractor or prime grantee has can provide their DUNS and their basically their entity their information about the entity. That's all it is. They do not have a requirement to go in and do a registration in SAM. Registration in SAM is a pretty when we talk about a registration, we're talking about a very lengthy process and filling out a lot of information related to the entity.
Okay, great. Is there help or reference documentation available to help me understand better why multiple DUNS might have been set up for my university? E.g.
Okay. Yeah. So So the reason the multiple DUNS, so maybe set up for universities, every unique entity with, especially, and with this, some of this is driven by Department of Education, but every unique entity within and I'm going to go on a more global scale here, a little more holistic. Every unique entity by location is required to have a separate identifier and register separately in SAM. So there's requirements around awards that we have both the entity who is being awarded and the location, the physical location of where that entity is being at. So within the case of the university, every single individual physical location there maybe is why you most likely have multiple DUNS associated with the university. If, each one's a separate school or separate building, that very well how they're determining the uniqueness of who actually was awarded the like I said, a grant or financial assistance.
I think we've heard, Zach, that there are some universities in the past that have expressed interest in being able to streamline that, and it's something that we wanted to have a conversation about based on previous meetings. So yeah, I think some interest in streamlining that.
Okay, great.
There'd be policy discussions around something like that, but yeah, that would definitely.
Yeah. All right, if you want to, are you controlling the screen, Lillian?
Edgar, do you mind advancing the slide?
So the next one is this is our feedback process. Are these slides being distributed at the end?
Yep, the slides and the recording will be posted.
Okay, so everything else is about customer service and how to get back, how to get information back to us or connect with us. If you go to the very last slide, if anyone wants to take a screenshot of that one, it has all the contact information, including the registration link for the, it's the next slide, including the registration link for the industry day. So it is 4:01, so wanted to get this one in front of people.
Yeah, I did see that a few of the final questions were about making sure people can stay in contact with you both. All right, so I think that is all the time we have for today. Unless you both have some final comments you'd like to make.
Just, I think a final thank you to everyone who participated today and to the FTP for having us. As you can see, this is a pretty significant transition for us. So every opportunity we have to get out and talk to people who use the system is really great for the program and for everybody, I think. So thank you.